pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I didn't think you were going to be represented. Nope.
Welcome to the Board of Supervisors meeting, August 2nd, 2022. Is there any changes to the agenda?
I have
I have none. Meet with department heads and elected officials. Sarah Doty, Payroll and Auditor's Office.
Good morning. Just keeping busy as usual. Nothing new to report at this time.
Okay, thank you. Colin Gerst.
Good morning, just keeping busy like always. Got some project stuff we're working on, that's about it.
Thank you for what you've done and
The Rodney and the maintenance guys did all the heavy lifting here. I mean, they did the mountain and everything else, so it looks pretty good, so we're all set to go.
we think as much wood you chopped up for your father-in-law, you be able to do that.
Makes him up. Show us your muscles, Rodney.
Coming over here, Janelle.
Good morning. Just a reminder that the treasurer's office is closed today. The gals are up in Washington, Iowa for Iowa DOT training. Haven't done this in like 12 years, so it's a good thing. We are working on the property taxes for the statements. So I expect those in the next couple of weeks. But other than that, we're keeping busy.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Chris Lade, Conservation.
Good morning. We are coming into our last week of summer camp, so that's exciting. I can believe the summer's already flown by this fast. We are gearing up for our volunteer dinner. If you haven't already got your invite, there's one coming. That's Friday, August 12th, 5 o'clock at the Nature Center. And then our summer celebration event will be the next day, Saturday, noon to 3, I think that is. And that's a public event. So those are the events coming up. This weekend we had the celebration of life for our camp host who passed, Otto Grunewald. Had a huge turnout for that. I mean, hundreds of people came in. Just I think it just shows, you know, the reach and the impact that those folks have in that campground, the number of people they interact with, just what good people they are. So we're happy to see that. And you know, our condolences to the friends and family of the Grunewalds. They're really just part of our conservation family. So otherwise, just grinding through summertime. Campgrounds have been staying busy. We usually hit a lull right about now with the fairs going on, but we've been continually full. Fort Pumping Station was full this last weekend. Big Hollow was full this last weekend. So I think the nice weather last week probably fine.
Good. Thanks, Chris. Ken Hyman, Seal Region.
Good morning. Just keeping busy like usual. We did send out 2 contracts to hospitals to see if we could get a basic contract with the hospital, but so far I haven't gotten any responses back from the 2 hospitals we sent them out to. So we'll keep waiting and see if we can get a hospital contract. That's just something that DHS is asking us to do. So we're working on it.
Okay.
Tom and I are still waiting on our pens. You took care of Jimmy.
Oh, I forgot the
Just throwing that out
pens.
there. Let's not have any special favorites here. Let's just keep it even.
You will get your pens, I promise.
I keep an eye on this one here.
Jimmy gets a pen. I want a pen.
Yes.
Thanks, Ken. Terry Johnson, the County Auditor.
Good morning. Just an election update. August the 8th through the 31st, August the 31st is the filing period for the Soil and Water Conservation District Commissioners. They have to have 25 signatures, and the Ag Extension Council members have to have 25 signatures. But then there's also anybody that wants to file for any other county offices, if they are filing as a non-party political organization candidate, which is NPPO, they need 75 signatures. And any candidates nominated by petition, 75 signatures, and this includes the Democrat and Republican Party nominees, excuse me, to fill any ballot vacancies. So those are still available out there. And then the other important dates for absentee voting is the first day to submit an absentee ballot request form for a ballot to be mailed. The first day that we can receive it is August the 30th, so don't send it on the 29th because we can't accept it. According to Iowa code, we have to send it back even though it's the day before. And then, but after we get those, the first day that we can actually mail the ballots, that we are allowed to mail ballots, is October the 19th. And that's also the first day that anybody can vote in person. So those 2 days are the same, so you might send in a request form because you're expecting a ballot to be mailed, and then all of a sudden you hear that there's absentee voting going on in person. Well, that same day that that starts is the same day that we mail your ballot, so they've tightened that up, so. Anyway, that's just some of our important dates for the elections.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Carter, secondary roads.
Good morning. Couple things, we are still working towards an auction for our two old shop sites, the one in Mediapolis and the one in Pleasant Grove. I'll have to take a look, Shane, if that recycling bin is still there. They're probably gonna wanna have it on their radar to move. I think you were gonna talk to somebody and have it done, but the auction is August 25th. I'll get the website, I'll get all that information to you guys, and we have a list of people that want contacted. I think you guys have passed a few on, and we have some people call, so we'll let them know that. So they probably want to get that, if it's still there. I'll double check, see if it's still there or not. So just thought about it when I brought it up. So anyway, that's coming up. And I want to mention the intersection of Pleasant Grove Road and Highway 61 is back open as of, I believe, this morning. I don't know if it was late last night, but it was definitely this morning open. So that'll be good. We did do a bid for a patch on Pleasant Grove Road. I think you guys are aware of it. I'd like to tell you it came in cheap, but I don't think anything comes in cheap anymore. We had one bidder, which is probably one bidder more than we deserve. So we'll probably accept it. Came in a little over 300,000. I was hoping it'd be in the upper twos, but again, in today's world, especially with concrete right at the moment, I don't know that I can sit here and even predict what it'd be day to day. So,
It's gonna be more next year.
I think didn't you say concrete took $5 yard jump?
yeah, and that was just an immediate
good.
jump. They don't normally do
Yeah.
that, but they sent a letter out and it was immediate. So, yeah, it's just the nature of things at the moment. I think everybody knows it.
What is the yard of concrete now?
Well, we don't do business by the yard of concrete very often, but as I understand it, it's somewhere in the 175 to 200 range. So I don't, that's not how we, I guess, buy it normally, but, because normally ours have some labor figured into that number also. So we will probably, I'll try to put a contract in front of you guys, hopefully Tuesday, because it's got a late start date at the end of August. It is a local contractor. I'll give them a verbal that we're gonna go ahead and approve it, but so that they can kind of gear up for doing it. I figure that will close Pleasant Grove, that segment of Pleasant Grove Road, probably for close to a month, if I had to guess. But it'll get that fixed up. It'll be a little bit like Upper Flint. Once we do that, you'll have people ask you why in the world you didn't do the rest of it. You can just tell them that we need to find out what things cost. I mean, it's just that simple. So that'll take care of that. Couple other things coming up. We got a couple projects that haven't started yet. The little gravel road up north of on 99 there, north of that little housing development, 115th. We bid that way back when. That's got a late start date and I want to say the end of August sometime also. So we're doing a pre-con on that, and they're gonna start as late as they can, which is fairly usual. That's the one where we're shifting that road a little bit. We bought right away, and we're just getting some ditches alongside of it so water has somewhere basically to sit, because really water there's not gonna run particularly well. So that's coming along. And then we also have a pre-con coming up for the T-17 bridge project, which is the Dry Branch Bridge on 99 to the north. Until we have that pre-con, I couldn't tell you when they're planning on starting. They don't have to start anything until late fall. I'll be surprised if they do, but I'll give you a better idea whenever that meeting gets going. So that's coming up too. Other than that, we're working on some plans. probably be getting some signatures from you guys for some bid plans over the next month or month and a half to get some stuff mailed out for next year's work.
Ryan, are you gonna have, complete closure of Pleasant Grove Road, or are you gonna have, one lane?
That will be complete closure. Yes, it will.
Just which direction?
That will be west of Beaverdale. So it'll be between Beaverdale and Danville Road.
Yeah.
That'll be a segment in there where it'll be closed. So, yeah, it will be a complete closure. We set it up that way, one, because there were two stretches in that one spot that needed full width. Well, if you're gonna do full width, we were afraid we'd get no bids at all if we didn't set it up to where somebody could bring a paver in. Because patching crews are normally booked for 3/4 of a year out, and they're more kind of the saw cutter, the half lane kind of guys. So we set it up trying to make sure we got some bids, I guess is the best way to put it. So, and it needs it, it's not that it didn't need it, so
How long are you looking at a closure?
about a month. My hope is that it's open for a majority of harvest. That was kind of how we targeted it, was from about mid to late September on, hopefully it'll be open and ready to go. And of course, they could start earlier. I mean, we'll find out. I haven't talked to the contractor yet, but it will be a full closure.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Rodney Blazer, maintenance.
Good morning, we just got a lot of stuff going on. A reminder, there's some stuff on Good Deals. If anybody's interested in some of that stuff we have posted, you can go to the county's website, click on the link, and it's got the stuff that's listed. Got joint safety committee meeting on Thursday, along with a meeting with the architect on some of the geo projects that we have going on, so hopefully we can try and get those documents kind of finalized and get those hopefully done soon and to you guys for some approval so we can get those projects moving forward. I gotta thank Brian and his crew on working on the parking lot projects down here, so I know they're working on that, so I appreciate them guys' help on putting that together and helping us out with that. So that's still kind of in the works. Also, next week we'll have on the agenda for the agreement for Optimate for their space out at the 910 Cottonwood stuff, so finally got that back, so that'll be on the agenda for next week, so just got a lot of different things going on,
Okay,
but other than that,
and thank you for doing Colin's heavy work for us. Appreciate that. Very nice. Thanks, Rodney. And you on safety.
Good morning. We really just keeping busy, working on getting some training videos put out ahead of time, having some extras so there's something constantly going with everyone. And then, as Rodney said, we got a special meeting on Thursday. Other than that, that's about it.
Thank you. Sheriff Glendenning, you thought you were getting by, didn't you?
I did, I was hoping so. Been a busy morning so far, but all is well. The fair's wrapping up this morning. That's been another great event. The Fair Board and the Extension Office and everybody that puts effort into that, they just do an amazing job. So it's been a good week out there. We have National Night Out tonight from 6 to 8. We'll be at the riverfront on the south side of the auditorium. So if you have time, come out and see us, say hi, stop by, grab a beverage or a hot dog and check out the equipment we'll have there. We'll have our K9, our MRAP, our boat, and a lot of our personnel down there to chat with you. We had interviews yesterday. We had 5 candidates make it through our testing process for our physical and written testing. We did a couple interviews yesterday, and we'll continue those today with the Civil Service Commission. And then we'll have a certified list probably at the conclusion of those interviews today, a list from which we can hire from. Our jail was at 77 this morning with 4 out of county, had 7 in intake, so another busy night where we filled the intake cells, but all is well.
What'd that number start off at, KG?
14 applicants, a few of those didn't show up, and then we lost.
Still got 5 out of the 14 though,
Yes.
that's actually pretty good.
Yep, lost a few on the physical, lost a few on the written, but that's kind of that's pretty typical for what we see, but still some really good applicants.
Good.
Great. How's the attorney's office doing, Trent?
Busy, so Chris is upstairs, he's got trial today, lease is still out for the next month. And then, we're gonna be helping out with National Night Out tonight. Everything's rolling pretty good though.
That's good. Did I miss anybody? No, guess not.
Krista?
It's me.
Oh, Krista,
Hi.
gracious, I've looked at you twice.
That's all right. Good morning. So we're also gonna be helping out with National Night Out tonight. We are gonna be offering COVID vaccines, so we'll have the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccine for anyone that's interested, so. And then we have a work session to follow.
Would, on that, would you be giving booster shots too? If people need the
Yes.
booster shots?
Yes, we will be giving the booster shots. Reminder, again, it's 5 months after the completion of the initial series, a person can get the first booster. And then people at high risk or 50 and older are able to get the second booster 4 months after that first booster. So, and encourage people to bring their cards, because that makes it easier for us to be able to have that record, because we can look it up in the system. The problem is sometimes it's hard for us to get internet service there to be able to access the state system.
Okay, thank you. One more time, did I miss anybody this time? Okay. Seeing that, we shall move on to correspondence. I see none here. Do any, you gentlemen have correspondence?
I have none.
I have none.
Okay, we shall move on to discussion and vote. First thing on the agenda is the 2022 Edward Byron Memorial Assistance Grant, also noted as a JAG. This is what the, Kevin, you want to kind of explain this a little bit? You're involved in this.
I can do it briefly, but we're in the Burn Jag grant. We do it jointly with Burlington. Burlington really carries the weight on this. They do the application, and typically year to year, it's based on equipment needs that we get jointly with Burlington. And I think Major Klein can probably describe the equipment that we're gonna get. It's gonna be based on active shooter response and kind of the details of the grant.
Yep, this year's grant is, as the sheriff said, based on active shooter response. Nationally, it's become a problem. It's only a matter of time before it hits the Midwest. It's happened in Indiana, it's happened in Illinois. As a department, we feel like we are woefully ill-prepared from an equipment standpoint. We would like to mirror what the sheriff has done. The bulk of the sheriff's department is already tactically trained. We only have 6 of our officers that are. The bulk of the incidents that we would have from an active shooter perspective, our patrol officers are going to respond to those incidents. The likelihood of a tactical team being able to show up and neutralize an active shooter is going to take 1 hour to 2 hours, where our patrol officers are going to be on the scene within a minute or two. We want to make sure that we have the requisite amount of equipment that they would need to enter and neutralize that suspect, as the sheriff's department already does. As a disparate agency, we make that equipment available to the sheriff's department as well. The only addition that we would have, we're going to add, as the tactical team calls them, kits. Each officer is equipped with a kit, K-I-T.
Okay.
Each officer is equipped with a tactical vest, a helmet, a communication system, and other equipment that's necessary for that tactical response. The only addition that we will add that the sheriff's department might not carry car to car are ballistic shields. Those would enable the first 3 officers to enter any structure that's taking place with an active shooter situation. They would be better protected than just the vest that they would be wearing. So the grant that we're applying for this year is up to just a shade over $20,000. We have added to that grant 3 kits total, which takes us just under that $20,000 threshold. The bonus to the sheriff's department would be, if we ever show up and the sheriff's department is on scene, our officers have the same equipment that they do, in addition to the ballistic vests, where now the sheriff's department and the PD can go in at the same time, utilizing the same equipment and understand the use of that equipment.
Thank you.
So essentially, all we need is an autograph from the supervisors and an autograph from the county attorney's office, and we will get that grant submitted tomorrow.
Okay.
Major Klein, we don't get somebody here very often from the Burlington Police Department, and the sheriff's well aware of the support and respect that this board has for his department. Your department shares that respect, so we appreciate what you do. And I would be happy to make a motion to approve that.
I'll second that.
Sarah?
Tom Broker?
Yes.
Shane McCampbell?
Yep.
Jim Carrey?
Yes. Okay. He's just stamped too, I suppose.
Jeff has the original here.
We'll get you to sign both of them, put that away.
Okay.
This is his, but.
Do we need this here?
Yeah, we'll keep that one for our files and we'll,
You want this stamped?
do you want to?
Just the signature's fine.
The
Just
signature.
signature's fine, okay.
You can bother Trent on Terry's way back.
Trent needs to sign it.
Trent needs to sign right underneath where you guys did.
Trent.
With its tape.
Me to fire out the arms?
No, West Burlington.
Oh.
Something in West Burlington.
Moving on to approval of the 2021 Homestead Military Exemption. If you want to. Honorable Board of Supervisors, I don't know which one you are honorable, but that's good. A list of claims for homestead exemption in accordance with section 425.3 and claims of military service tax credits in accordance with chapter 426A and section 427.3 and 427.6 are attached to this letter. Board of Supervisors may, by single resolution, allow or disallow the exemptions as recommended. I hereby request the Homeland and military tax exemption be approved. Homestead value $53,608,015. Military value is $3,468,796. These exemptions are for the 2021 tax payables 2022 and 2023. Terry Johnson.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sarah Doty.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yep.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Okay, moving on, we have the National Night Out Proclamation. Would you like to read this, sir?
I'd love to, sir. Whereas the National Association of Town Watch, NATW, sponsors a national community building campaign on Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022, entitled National Night Out. And whereas the National Night Out campaign provides an opportunity for neighbors in Des Moines County and the greater Burlington area to join over 38 million neighbors across 16,000 communities from all 50 states, U.S. territories, and military bases worldwide. Whereas National Night Out is an annual community building campaign that promotes strong police, community partnerships, and neighborhood camaraderie to make our neighborhoods safer, more caring place to live and work, and assist local law enforcement agencies through joint community building efforts and support National Night Out 2022. And whereas it is essential that all neighbors of Des Moines County and the greater Burlington area come together with law enforcement and work together to build a safer, more caring community. Amen. And now therefore, we, the Board of Supervisors for Des Moines County, Iowa, do hereby call upon all citizens of Des Moines County to join the Des Moines County Sheriff's Department, the Des Moines County Attorney's Office, the Burlington Police Department, and National Association of Town Watch in support for National Night Out on Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022. Further, let it be resolved that we, the Board of Supervisors for Des Moines County, Iowa, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, August 2nd, 2022 as National Night Out in Des Moines County, Iowa.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Now we have a resolution for the final plat of the Myers Corner Subdivision. Do want anybody able from the planning commission to address this. I received a call from Zach James last night, and he said everything is in order, everything's been approved, and he recommended to go ahead and approve this.
Motion to approve.
Second. Sarah Doty?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes, please.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. We'll sign these after the meeting, okay? We have accounts payable claims in the amount of $1,026,060.35.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sarah Doty?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. We have payroll claims. We have one for the auditor.
Personnel actions.
What's that?
They're personnel actions, not payroll.
I think you knew what he meant. You were being awfully rude.
First of all.
I can't help myself sometimes.
I wasn't the only one that said it.
What did I say?
Payroll claims.
Oh, well, it is coming out of payroll.
Very valid point.
Yes, it is.
Very valid point.
Okay. Now that I'm back on track here, this is for Sarah Doty. This
I know you
here
might
is-
want to question that one now.
Yeah, very interesting.
Unanimous.
It's an anniversary 18th month step increase. Previous rate was $55,528.87. The new rate is $59,332.22.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Sarah?
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Shane McCampbell.
I suppose. Yes, yes.
Jim Carrey.
I'm still thinking. Yes.
Think about it, Jimmy.
The next one is for local health. It's Judith Weatherwax, certified nurse's aide, retiring last day 7/29/2022.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Sarah?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker.
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. And we have the minutes for the regular meeting on July the 26th, 2022.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Sarah?
Shane McCampbell,
Yes.
Tom Broker,
Yes.
Jim Carrey.
Yes. Do we have any other business?
I have none.
We got here that discuss rescinding ATV, UTV ordinance number 56. We have a workstation for that, or?
Well, I understand you guys discussed it when I was gone.
Yeah.
And so whether you are, if you want me to start doing the legal notice or,
Well, I think we're talking about rescinding our legal notice, go ahead and rescind it, because the state overrode everything we've got.
so you want me to go ahead and
I feel we should. What do you think?
decide on some dates
I
or
think
whatever?
just gotta, yeah.
Are we, we're just gonna do a resolution?
Okay, because,
Yeah, I don't think we need a work session, just think we need a resolution to rescind it.
so you're just gonna do a resolution,
Or, I'm sorry, ordinance. so
an ordinance?
with the
Okay,
three,
because the
yeah.
ordinance would require the three readings, which you
readings,
guys
yeah.
can waive, so
Yeah.
that's why I didn't know if you wanted me to send in an advertisement for the 3 dates, because we have to do that ahead of time, so. You want me to just choose on my own?
Yep.
Okay, I will. Thank you. I'll get it done.
Okay.
She's such a good worker.
Thanks, Terry. We
I'll let you know
appreciate-
what I decide.
Could be next week, could
And
be
I'm
next
sure it'll
month.
be better than what we would decide, so.
I just wanted to verify
Yeah.
that, because I know you discussed it, so.
Future agenda items. Outside of our workstations we've got here, I don't have any other.
I have none.
I have none. Committee reports.
I attended a DESCOM meeting. We had a special meeting to hear an employee appeal, and the appeal was granted. And that's all I have.
I watched the back of Tom's head during that meeting, and also at 8th Judicial District about leadership and area recyclers. Nothing really to report on that.
I had a Southeast Harbor Region Planning meeting, and just went over some of the transportation, the new shed they've got out there and everything, but nothing new to report. Public input. Anybody from the public have anything to say? We'll give you 2 minutes. You can call in at 319-753-8203, extension 4, or email board@dmcounty.com. That's board@dmcounty.com. We'll give you 2 minutes. Anybody here got anything to say? How about you, John?
Just cleanup finally started yesterday up at Yarmouth with the soybeans and stuff, so hopefully that proceeds and gets done before the stink gets any worse and the rodents and everything else for the community.
Gets pretty bad, doesn't it?
With these rains and the heat and humidity.
I should go ahead and sign some of this stuff while we're.
Colin, I see we've got 5 viewers on YouTube. So are we getting any closer to becoming a revenue item?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, only need over 1 million.
Just a thought.
Unfortunately, no.
Lowering taxes.
Like I said, I thought maybe the board should get some sponsorship jackets or something.
Hang little banners in front of their desk.
Yeah, there you go.
What about if we did TikTok? That's a new thing.
That's what we call it.
Because if we're gonna do some ordinance to rescind or
As far as like located. That's true. At least it was one that Jackson gave me. I said we wanted to see.
I've seen one, someone looked at it, and it wasn't just a page, it was like one sentence.
And then what?
Okay, 2 minutes is up, so with an eye, we're out of here.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have a workstation now. Coming up, give us about,
You did. I thought maybe you were just done with that one.
5 minutes here with public health.
And I told the 70th Avenue or the ordinance work session folks to be about 10 o'clock, but I also mentioned to them that there might be one wrapping up before them. So
Okay.
we've got a gap in between.
Good.
have had some concerns that's been brought to us, one of which had kind of come through Jim, Carrie, as well as one that's coming through Southeast Iowa Regional Planning, that there's a couple of buildings, homes that have become a nuisance for their neighbors. And one of the questions had been from these people is if there was any kind of a county ordinance to take care of these nuisance buildings, because they feel like it's a high risk. The one building is located where it's burned in the past, and so there's broken glass that when the wind blows into the neighbors' yards, and there's young kids playing in those yards, and they were concerned about that. So I reached out to Trent and kind of talked to him about that after receiving an email from this person. And to verify there wasn't a county ordinance, and there is not a county ordinance, but when I talked to Trent, he talked about what this person had mentioned was actually the state ordinance, which there is a state nuisance ordinance, and there's certain criteria that falls under that. So when I talked to Jim, he asked if we have a work session so we can discuss, if the board of supervisors wanted to look at the state ordinance, or if there was, wanted to move forward with anything, so.
And I've talked with the sheriff about this once or twice in the past. I don't remember, but you were the one that let me know that this is the DNR.
So there's a state code that covers any site that's used for dumping, and of course, trying to find that line between somebody that just has trash in their yard compared to treating it as a dump site. So the code makes it pretty clear once it becomes a pile of rubbish, debris, trash, then that's considered a dump site. And we have some things we can do to enforce it, but this might be outside of, I'm unaware of the ordinance for the fire hazard, or the code for the fire hazard, so that's kind of interested to learn a little bit more about that.
Okay, so what I've done in kind of researching this, like you said, I couldn't find a county ordinance on point. However, there's state ordinances on point. And there's kind of two ways that communities go about this. When I say communities, whether we're talking cities and or counties both, without private separate ordinances. And there's one chapter, 657, which is just your traditional old-fashioned nuisance suits. And there's some benefits to that, there's some downsides to that. The other one is newer code section, probably, when did it first come in, I'd have to look at the back.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You said there's a couple places, and I'm sure, is this typically non-resident landowners that somebody lives somewhere else, not somebody that?
Nobody's living there.
No one's living there. This
Two
one,
that are-
yeah, one was a business previously, and the other place was, and I think it's just an abandoned house.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, guys.
Sure. So, and the other one's 657A, and that specifically deals with abandoned or unsafe buildings. So, the big difference is, that 657A kind of builds off of some of the definitions and then the case law of the traditional nuisance chapter in 657 itself. But what we can do with 657 is we can go ahead and declare a nuisance, set civil penalties. We went through this last year with the dumping of sewer water. You remember that? It's hard to enforce, because if they don't have money to fix up their own house, they don't have money to pay the civil penalties. It just, so you can go through it that route. And it also has a mechanism where we can go ahead and abate. Instead of saying, hey, we're gonna give you a civil penalty, just go ahead and abate, pay to fix it, and then charge them for it. But again, we run into the same problem, right? If they're broke, they're broke, they're broke. So what's
Can you put it on their
657?
taxes? So when eventually that property is sold?
We can, but the problem becomes, then are they gonna pay that property tax? If they don't pay that property tax, does it then get purchased at tax sale or not, because, you know, if we have to tear down the building and you have $10,000 property, you know, tax liability on an empty lot, right now, maybe, when the lots are selling for $30,000, maybe somebody might think it's worth it, but maybe not. So, what 657A does is it kind of skips that, and it gives you the opportunity to just go in, declare it a nuisance, give them time to abate. If they don't abate, the county would take ownership of the land. Then you can abate it, go ahead and sell it. So the case law on it kind of starts in Eagle Grove. This is a 2017 case, and again, this is new legislation that provides new tools. But this is I think it's a fairly good tool. Eagle Grove jumped on it pretty quickly, and they adopted. So they were going through a nuisance ordinance when this was passed, and so they said, okay, these places that are nuisances, we're going to refile these as a 657A as an abandonment, and go ahead and take the properties. And then they had, I think they sold them to somebody. So instead of them going ahead and abating it themselves, they sold it to a contractor who said they would abate the nuisance within 6 months, and in fact, that happened. But so this is how the Supreme Court of Iowa is holding it up, and what they look at. So first of all, when you look at the nuisance article itself, the one we're kind of looking at, I think that gives us the most teeth in these two properties in particular. Both, I think, have been said that they're a fire nuisance. If you look at number 9, depositing or storing of flammable junk, such as old rags, rope, cordage, rubber, bones.
What?
Rubber, bones, I don't know, and paper. So, how does bones fit in there? Anyways, by dealers in such articles within the fire limit of the city unless in building a fireproof construction is a public nuisance. And then and so I think we can go in and have the fire chief go. And one of these, this one in particular that was brought, the fire chief for Burlington asked. He's like, hey, we've had a fire out here, we got it out, this place, it's gonna go up again, it's bad. So we got a fire chief telling us, hey, we need to get this torn down. I think that's enough if he writes us a report that we can go ahead and move forward. Now, the way 657A works, if we wanna do it, is we give them notice and request access. We have to have somebody that goes out to inspect the buildings to see whether or not it is abandoned. So we would have to pin that rose, and would that be Brian Carter? Would that be our maintenance supervisor? Would that be you? I mean,
County Attorney's Office.
I'm not PE.
It's not even them talking to you, Brian. Let him go, let him go.
You know?
I think he's talked too much.
I don't know who that is.
It was a broad brush.
I don't know who we want to do that, but I do think we need somebody that, or do we do it with somebody outside? I don't, do we go to, say, up the hill to the architect's office and say, who's your structural engineer? I don't know.
Let me ask you this, John, you're the fire chief out at where one of these buildings is at. What do you consider the shape of this building?
I know it's leaning, it's been leaning for years. Eventually, it'll come down because it's just sitting there not being used on its own. I know there's no electric, no gas, no water going to it. So the only way you're probably gonna get a fire started is if someone goes in and sets it. But I understand when the wind blows, and it's usually from the west, and it's always blowing up at Yarmouth Good.
Yeah.
The people that live to the east are always getting stuff deposited in their yard from material that falls off it. And the people to the east, they're 2 new members on the fire department, so I understand their concerns and stuff, especially with the little kids with glass falling out now and then. I know the Yarmouth Community Group that used to be up there that took on the old grocery store up there and stuff. And then it ended up falling down. It was supposed to be getting taken down, but it fell down before that date happened. Between John Fye and the fire department helping them out, they got that cleaned up, and now there's a nice pole shed setting on that facility. I know they looked at doing that with this facility. My only recommendation to them is you're probably gonna wanna get the slate siding on the side of it tested, because it's probably got asbestos. I can't say for sure, but usually siding back from that age, the slate siding usually has asbestos in it. So you've got that.
That creates another problem where you couldn't even burn that stuff.
No.
Yeah.
And as close as the neighbor's house is to it, I wouldn't burn it.
Yeah. Thanks for your input there, Ed.
I'm not for sure if you didn't approach the owner of the property, he wouldn't give it to you just to get rid of it. But then it's the county's responsibility to clean it up then.
Well, the taxes have been kept up on it and
Yeah.
everything, so.
Well, and that was kind of one of my suggestions, and I don't know what's in the budget or isn't, but with some of these, I think even if it was like $20,000, and I don't know how much it costs to demo a house like this, but if we fund it once, in theory, we could have a revolving fund, fund it once, get one of these nuisance abated, knock the house down, you have an empty lot left. Lots are selling for ridiculous amounts of money, I think, $30,000, pretty easy.
Depends on where you're at.
Depends on where
Probably
you're
not
at.
in Yarmouth.
Oh, yeah.
And especially that lot, I mean,
Yeah.
How big's that lot?
not very big.
If
It's
anything-
deep, but it's not very wide.
The neighbors might divide it and increase their
Well, there's
yard.
only one neighbor, because the road is
Oh, on the
next
other
to
side.
it.
How about the neighbor on the other side of the road there then, John? I'm talking about you. It's down the road from
Well, I'm back behind it. I'm to the north of that.
Yeah.
With buildings between me and it.
I want to go back to what you were talking, because first off, how many do we have that are starting to become a problem?
I think once we started doing this, I think we could keep doing it for as long as it could go. I mean, and I have no idea, but I bet there's a bunch out there.
I'm just saying, I know that we don't like to get in people's business out in the county, but sometimes if it's like that, then we're gonna have to make a decision at some point in time, and we just can't let things continue to dilapidate. It's gonna come back on the county. So if there's any way that we can turn something over and flip it and get something back on the tax rolls and get somebody in a property, I think that's probably something we need to look at.
And I'm guessing the reason the taxes have been, I think, the personal house was tied to the loan for that place, which she is no longer alive and stuff. But he's the one still owns the house and stuff, and so the loan was sort of tied to that house. I'm not for sure, but that's what I've heard after the fire and stuff up there originally.
Well, then that would make sense why the tax
Yes.
is being paid on it then.
But being a big, narrow two-story structure, and with the lien, whenever it does fall down, eventually it will. It's not when, it's if, or not if, it's when it'll fall down. The house to the east is it'll fall on that, and we'll have another rescue procedure going on up there.
Did you guys ever burn anything down purposely? Do we do that anymore, or is stuff so old that you can't?
He said it's too close.
Yeah, it's too close to the
Well,
house, I would, but
I realize on that one, I'm saying on other properties.
there is, but you've got to take shingles off and take all this stuff off and everything, and for fire departments, it's not worth it.
Okay.
I think that some of the last ones were done were when the FEMA buyouts, because the fire departments did a few structures down in the Tama area then, but I think we had all the shingles and the asbestos, any of that type of thing was removed, because I know there's a couple of houses that the fire departments practiced on down there.
Rural area, it's like farmers, they've got a structure, tell you burn it, what we tell them is, you call dispatch, tell them, I'm gonna burn this at this address, at this time, and if it gets out of control, I will call you. That way we don't have passerbyers calling in saying, hey, we got a fire here when it's a controlled burn. Some departments will go out and stand by just so if it does get out of hand, we're there and we're not behind the 8 ball on it. Others will, nope, you're burning it, it's your responsibility and stuff, and if it gets out of control, then call in and we'll be out.
Well, this particular house, it's got that asbestos on it. You know, that's another can of worms. That stuff, that's not cheap to.
Without being tested, I couldn't say for sure it does, but you could walk up next to it and grab some pieces off the ground, I'm sure, and have it tested.
Yeah.
As I recall, I believe the term's friable, F-R-I-A-B-L-E, friable asbestos. In other words, if you have a sheet that contains asbestos, if it hasn't been penetrated or cracked or something like that, it's not friable asbestos, and it's not that big a deal to get rid of. But if it is, that's where you see them build little tents and go in and clean that stuff up. So I don't know how they determine that. But Trent, what you're telling us, or what I understand is if we want to do, does it need to be a fire hazard or just a nuisance?
It doesn't technically have to be either, so, but I think one of our best ways is to go into nuisance. What they're saying they're looking at is never fully matches the code, because why would we do that? It just makes too much sense. So, when you look at what the courts are looking at, it's whether any property taxes or special assessments been paid. So the one south of town, property taxes has been paid. The owners of it have some sort of trust that pays for things, very cryptic. They won't tell me much other than, you know, their parents left them a trust and they get a little bit of money, you know, sent to their prison accounts or whatever. And I'm not joking. So the taxes are paid there. I don't know about the one north of town, sounds like they are. Whether any utilities are currently being provided to the property, so that would be a no. I think on both properties it sounds like. Whether the building is unoccupied or occupied, sounds like these are both unoccupied structures. Whether the building meets city housing codes for being fit for human habitation, occupancy, or use. And really, when you look at codes, we don't particularly have a code, however, we do reference the state's code for structures somewhere, I believe, at least in some of our stuff, I don't know. And one of these would be within our 2-mile zoning. One in Yarmouth certainly would be beyond that. So that they wouldn't fit there. Whether the building is exposed to the elements such that deterioration of the building is occurring, that's specifically what you're talking about up there in Yarmouth. Whether the building is boarded up, past efforts to rehabilitate the building and grounds, presence of vermin, accumulation of debris, uncut vegetation. The effort expended by the petitioning city to maintain the building and the grounds. And again, this is a city, that's why they keep saying city, but it works for either. Past and current compliance with orders of the local housing officials, and any evidence the court deems relevant. So when you look at the nuisance that comes straight from the code section. The code section, one of the things for 657A references back to 657 itself, and one of being a nuisance under one of these subsections specifically helps. And that's where we got this depositing, storing flammable junk, such. And it does also talk about safety as well. So as we're talking about glass blowing off the building into adjoining properties, that's a safety issue, right? So there's different ways you can get to this, and it's not a one and done, it's
But it would entail the county would need an ordinance.
I don't think we would need an
Just do it.
ordinance, but we need to assign an officer
And
to go and inspect those buildings.
so the
whether-
procedure would be when the county engineer is
Yeah.
doing his weekly
Well, yeah.
inspections, then he would, whether it's this property is or is not.
He's got the
a
perfect
safety
attitude for
hazard.
it too.
We're going
Yeah.
downhill.
Anyway, well, whoever did it.
Whoever it is, I mean,
That motion.
and the way it kind of
Little diesel and a torch will take care of this.
talks in 657A is somebody notifies us there's an abandoned property that's been abandoned for 180 days. We send notice, ask for permission to inspect. Either we get permission to inspect or we don't. If we don't, then there's different routes we go from there. We have to have that person, whoever it is, and obviously, not to tease you, but I'm just saying, we want somebody that has some expertise to be able to look at a building and say, because is it somebody from, Department of Health, come in and say, hey, look, this is bad, it's, this isn't safe, this is gonna be environmentally bad because of ABC, maybe.
But once that decision's made, then
Yeah.
the county could either, like you said, either take possession of it, I assume,
Yes.
through some sort of a court order, or assign those taxes to abate that nuisance, to tear that building down or clean it up, whatever they're gonna do, and put those on the taxes. And I don't know that, worried about not paying the taxes, you regularly sell property to people that said, abate all those nuisance taxes that you put on that over the years, and we will put it back on the tax rolls.
Well, in the city of Burlington, it does the 657A all the time. In the county, actually legislation just went in last year where the county was added to this, because it was city only prior to, I believe, last year.
Okay.
So this is new for the county to even be considering this, because it always before was just city. And like I said, city of Burlington does a ton of them, so,
Yes.
yeah, which you would know, yeah.
I briefly looked at that code, and under the definition of abandoned, it says it has to be a violation of the county ordinance. When you look at the abandoned house.
Well, I'll say that would go under county ordinance or this, or
It says city or county ordinance, but then just that definition of abandoned, it.
I pretty much think
Yeah,
that's
it
probably
hasn't
the
gone to our
discretion
building
of the
code
county engineer.
applicable
Yeah, it does.
in the county in which the property is located outside limits of the city. But again, we have the state building code, so if it's, we have brought in via code, the state building code is gonna be what we use.
And you say we need somebody with knowledge on building and that. I know a gentleman sitting right up here to my left. I think we could vote him in for that.
no doubt, good call.
He had a construction business.
I-
He knows all about this.
I never erected a steel erection on a house.
But I'm gonna tell you, this building we're talking about, you know what it was like 25 years, 40 years
I
ago.
spent some time in that building.
Yeah.
I'm
Based
familiar
across-
with that structure.
I used to call Tom Superman, man of steel. Hey,
I
on that
would-
abandoned,
if you're-
on that abandoned, does that mean nobody's literally living there, or that they basically
No.
abandoned taking care of the property?
No, well, so it could be occupied, that's one of the considerations, whether it's occupied or unoccupied, and it could have squatters in it too. So it could have the actual person living there, like the actual owner living there, it could be squatters, it could be nobody, but those are all part of the considerations as to whether or not it's abandoned or not. And so, and these are all factors, right? It's not, none of them are elements, it's, you know, these are all factors. The court's gonna look at a building as a whole and say, yep, we get it, something needs to be done here, or, yeah, you know, it's might be an eyesore, but they're, you know, they're there, they're in it, it's functioning,
Right.
see what I'm saying?
I can, most of my calls on this kind of a conversation are people living there and people that are unhappy, whether it be neighbors or whether it be people that are sick of driving by and looking at it.
It's
or
most of
something
your
like
phone
that.
calls?
Yes, absolutely. It's not for abandoned stuff. It's for people that are unhappy about the condition of a property.
You, if you were gonna have an ordinance like that, you would wanna very carefully craft the language so that it does affect something that actually has been abandoned and is creating some sort of safety hazard net.
That would be my concern, is to say that if we're adopting the entire building code, then how do you draw the line on what you're going to enforce? Almost to the extent that we would need our own ordinance to be able to say, this is the level that we're willing to go to.
That's already done by default, whether, if we don't have one, it's the state building code. And they, I know people have gone out, so, like, people in the county have had to redo things for not being inspected or not being up to state building codes, that's already a thing. So, that's just it.
I would think if you're anywhere near serious on this, you would want to do a little bit of a survey of entities. If there are any counties that have jumped on this right away, or a couple cities, not all of them, of just seeing how they handle the inspection side of it. It could easily be, if you get serious about this, that it could be an MOU with the city of Burlington, and they might be willing to share if we reimburse for their cost of time for somebody that regularly goes and looks at these structures, because they said the city of Burlington does it all the time.
Yeah, and they have,
Yeah,
you know,
somebody
they've got-
somebody does it already, probably for time and material kind of a situation on a per instance basis, which would hopefully be rare. It'd be an easy cost share, and I'm guessing the city would work with us on something like that. But I would do a little bit of research with other counties, or just a survey to mail out and say, is anybody else jumping on this code section? And if you are, could you send us your policy or how you handle it? Instead of trying to invent the wheel right now, let's see if somebody else has invented the wheel.
John, let me ask you, do they maintain that yard and all that around there?
That's what I was gonna say, your one south of town here probably doesn't get mowed or anything. Probably weeds are growing up around it, I'm guessing. But this facility, the neighbor that's having the problem with it, I'm sure they're the ones that keep it mowed, just so it looks nice around their place. So it's up, the ground upkeep is there and stuff. Other than some of the windows, but they were broke, some of the windows upstairs were broke when it was still in business, and pieces would fall out now and then. So other than where some holes got cut in the backside and stuff, looking at the outside really doesn't look a whole lot different than it did when it was in operation. It's just, like I said, eventually it's going to come down from just years of neglect and stuff.
You thought that the owner of that property, if asked, may adjust?
It just depends too on his loan, the lien against it and stuff. If he, I just don't know. I know he doesn't want anything to do with it. I don't remember if they were married when this all happened, or if it was common law marriage or something, but it was her thing, but his house got tied into it and stuff, but he doesn't want anything to do with the place and stuff. There was a couple across the street that had a key to it because some barrels were kept in there for the Yarmouth fun days, for trash barrels and stuff right inside the door and stuff, but that's not even being done anymore.
So I guess I'm just gathering what you're saying. So this person, there's a surviving spouse that has a home, which isn't the building in question. This is a separate business structure that you think was part of collateral for a loan.
I think so.
I see.
Well, I agree with what Brian just said. We ought to send a survey out before we go any further and get some more information, and then we can come back and meet again on this.
We do that.
I agree. If we're gonna touch this, you'd want to be very careful.
Yeah.
You'd,
Yeah, and a lot of them, I think, a lot of the ones you're talking about, people, where people are living there, are those structures or are those people calling about trash?
Well, it tends to be both. It tends to start with they're unhappy about the yard, then it rolls into they're unhappy about the garage or the structure or a barn or, I mean, an unhappy neighbor doesn't stop at just one thing. Or an unhappy whatever. We had somebody in here a month ago talking about, she named 3 or 4 different places off. I mean, this is not a new topic. 15 years ago, we did a big deal up in Pleasant Grove Road, because up in the town of Pleasant Grove. You drive by that guy's property, he's got that entire center of that old square clear full of.
People are still upset about that.
They haven't gone away. Well, we couldn't do anything but the right of way, so we moved up there. We had law enforcement, do you remember that? We had law enforcement, he threatened to shoot people, if I remember right. That was the point on that whole stupid thing. So.
I think, I say we said wrong experience.
So you're willing to do it again, so you're
I'm glad he brought that up.
And that was just the right of way. That was just the right of way.
I really believe that there's a lot of these structures in the county, and to define it would be, I guess, important to what level we're willing to go, because I think that person would be pretty busy, at least initially, because we do get a lot of those calls on abandoned structures or occupied structures of just concerns, and obviously there is that, there's the state building code, there's the state fire code, but we don't inspect or enforce to that level locally. But when push comes to shove, it is the code.
And one of them in the code is occupied structures that are houses of ill repute, and there's, when you read the code section, some of them are not laughable, I mean, but you look and you read it, and like, oh my gosh. But they talk about houses where they're using or manufacturing drugs, they're talking about houses of ill repute. So some of them are occupied, and some of them, they can be specifically because of the way they're occupied.
And I know years ago, there was a lot out in the county that there was some grant money or something because they were getting, these abandoned houses were being used for drug facilities, so, it came in and they all got tore down through some grant through the county or a state grant or something, but, the houses got tore down and stuff, cause I know, the ones that had asbestos or dust in it, we had to go down and wet down and stuff. Why they did that, but that's been years ago. There was.
Check, see if there's any grants out there.
Do we still get a problem with meth houses or whatever out in the county?
Not near to that level. Meth is different now. It's ice that's made.
Well, I mean, whatever it is, do we have a problem with people out in the county trying to find places to?
It's not manufactured locally anymore.
Okay.
It still does happen. It's more of a rare occasion. It's just the unfortunate truth is that it's more efficient to bring it in bulk from south of the border, and that's where our local meth comes from. It's not made locally anymore. And I think a lot of the code changes, the regulations on ephedrine and pseudoephedrine and crackdowns on that really helped, but now they just bring it in different ways.
One thing too, on the 657A, when they added the county to this, it was just a city. The legislation covered the cities before, but when they added the county, they did limit the property size to no larger than 2.5 acres, so just another thing I'm throwing out there. This isn't gonna be something that, you're gonna have.
That's actually very helpful. I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do about that farm structure that's out in the middle of?
It specifically says when they added county to this, they added that in, so.
We'd have to subdivide it to
Yeah. Bring in Jared.
I'm about to say, I was going to say, where's Jerry?
I know that-
This started with the complaint that went through Jared's office.
Yeah.
It would
Full
be a
circle,
sticky
right?
situation because there's 2 other facilities up in Yarmouth that no one lives at, and neighbors take care of the property, or the one has someone take, but the house is, you can see it falling apart and stuff, just on the edge of town, and then there's one right in town that probably no one's lived in for at least 20, 30 years.
It looks like nobody's lived in it for 20, 30 years.
It's kept up. I mean, the outside is mowed and stuff. Part of the roof, I think, has a blue tarp up on it. But with no zoning in the county, how do you enforce that? I mean, because with no zoning in the county, I was dealing with the Yarmouth aftermath myself, living right next to that with the stink, the rodents, and I can tell you, people around, there was a lot of phone calls made in the last month trying to get something done on this because of the smell and stuff. Finally, I don't know if someone finally made the right call or what, because when the crane crew came in, they put fence up around the whole facility. Crane crew came in, hauled their equipment out. I asked them, I said, so what's the shutdown? They said, the lawsuit. He said, we don't know when we'll ever, he said it could be a year or longer before we're back. But people in the community's looking at this rotten corn or beans on the ground, and the stink's already bad. You got rodents running around, and because the night they put the fence up, I didn't know if they put it around back, and I went out back with my flashlight. Yep, fence is up there, and I seen about 4 or 5 sets of eyes. There's goons out there trying to figure out where this fence came from that's never been there before. But with no zoning, the county couldn't do anything for us really to get this cleaned up. And
Is the fence around the side, is that to keep the area untouched so that it could be
supposedly
examined?
Well, right now they're in there taking the grain out that was underneath the collapse zone. Started yesterday again and stuff, so I don't know if some phone calls to DNR or whatever move that. I know my wife talked to state DNR and they said stuff like that grain is supposed to be cleaned up within 30 days of being on the ground. So I don't know if that's what happened. All I know is it started getting cleaned up, and we didn't know if this was gonna be done or if we were gonna look at this for a year, 2 years or whatever up there.
Well, Trent, you've got all the codes and everything. Can you write a letter like we're going to ask the other auditors, you know, and supervisors if they've done anything on this, and then maybe give the letter to Terry so she can send it off to the.
Sure good. Yeah, I can. Yeah. Something put together.
I mean, you guys probably have something online that
Yeah.
question and answer type that you can send out to other county attorneys to find out if they've addressed anything like that. We have like a base camp for auditors, so.
We really don't. Kind of go through the AG's office and they might respond, they might not, depending on whether they want to.
I know one of the county treasurers was big into getting this added, so Cerro Gordo County, that's where she's from. I don't know if they've done anything yet, but I
Okay.
guess I can reach out and ask her if county attorney's done anything.
That'd be good to know, yeah, yeah. Because we could, and one benefit to putting it into a county ordinance, or ever want to do that, would be we can outline our procedure. Because the procedure in here isn't exact, you know, it says, you know, you'll receive the complaint, and, you know, it's more of a broader outline. So, yeah, the ordinance would give us an opportunity to get a more defined procedure, more defined what are we really looking for, so we can do that, but, yeah.
Well, why don't we do that and see what kind of kickback we get from them, and then we can meet again on this.
Because I think those people that lived out on Fife Road several years ago that had the house, that the basement was being used as a barn.
Yeah,
Remember they came in because they
Yep,
complained
oh, yeah.
about the
We went
stench
out and
and
looked at
everything
that.
else.
yeah,
Basement was being used as what?
They used the inside of the house as a pen for animals.
yeah.
Used to be a thing, they pass things in the basement in the winter.
So that house is no longer there, is it?
Yeah, I believe it all got demoed and cleaned up.
Huh? Okay, is there anything else anybody wants to run through until we get this stuff back? Like conversation, I'd like to get a piece of that siding off of there, you know, John, if you happen to find a little piece.
Well, that's no problem, and I know because after the thing at Yarmouth happened,
Yeah,
we knew they were gonna be taking down these silos. Well, my daughter did some research, and certain silo companies and stuff used back in that year when them were built in the 70s, a lot of times, some of them used asbestos in it.
yeah,
So my daughters looked at this, and they start tearing this down, the stuff, dust is gonna be floating, and it floats toward my house. My daughter told me, said, well, the grandkids will never be up here. So when I turned the facility as fire chief over to the leasee, that day, I told him, I said, I know you're gonna be starting to take this stuff down. I said, there'll probably be a court order stopping you until it's asbestos testing is done. I said, I know from doing it for the fire departments to go into burn facility, it's not super expensive. And I said, it's a drop in the bucket compared to what you're looking at up here. So I know Brian Bross from Klinger up here. So I called Brian and he got me in touch because he was out in Washington DC. He put me in touch with one of the gals there. She gave me the cost and how long it'd take. I got back to their insurance company and, because that's who called me to want to know about it. And I said, she said $500 to $600 and you'll have the results tomorrow if you get a hold of her by noon today. He said, go ahead and do it. She came out, got the results, or 3 test samples, sent them in overnight. Next afternoon had the results back and there was no asbestos in it.
Rodney, if you bring a little piece, Rodney can tell if it's asbestos just by the taste, can't you, Rodney?
But Klingers does that testing and stuff. And it was, I think it was $500 is what it ended up costing that insurance
You used to be
company.
able to send samples up to like the university, they have
Yeah.
a specific place for that. If you just take a sample,
You can still
put it in
can
a
send
bag.
somewhere, I don't know where that is, but
You send it up there and you usually get it within 24 hours, you get a result pretty quick.
I know the guy from the insurance company, he said, I didn't believe she'd have it in 24 hours because he says, when we do stuff like this, it's a month or so before we get it. And I said, I know from the fire side, we've always had quick results.
okay, well, thank you, everybody, and we'll try and get that letter wrote. And we can start from there then.
I'll let them know to come on in.
Yeah, give us a couple minutes to refresh ourselves.
So Jim, what do you want me to do if I get you a sample? Because I can walk along the building and pick a piece up that's fell off, that's easy.
Well,
Put it in a bag.
Yeah.
put it in a bag, put it in, you going over update on the Des Moines County sea level road ordinance. So if you folks would state your name and who you are, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Carter for a second.
I'm Rick Word, I'm the one instigating it. I'm
Okay.
the one that's got the most complaints, I guess.
Alan Baird, next door.
Next door what?
Rick, what was your last name?
Wirt, W-I-R-T.
Landowner on the road.
Okay.
Don Heinze, I'm here representing Timber Ghost, Steve Fox.
Okay.
Wally West, I'm a property owner on the road.
Okay. We have our Trent for our county attorney, and we're gonna turn it over to you, Mr. Carter.
Well, first I'd like to say thanks. I know coming to a meeting on Tuesday at middle of the morning isn't handy, so, but it's important you guys come. Rick and I have been talking a long, long time on this, and so, really, I think I just wanna kinda summarize it, and then I'd like Rick and everybody else, if they wish to speak, to go ahead and talk to the board a little bit about their road and just why they think it's important to adjust the ordinance, I guess, because that's really what they're after to get to where they want to get to, I guess. That's the only way I see getting to where they want to get to anyway. So 70th Avenue is it's a dirt road. We've talked about this road on and off for board of supervisors long before this board of supervisors. Historically, it's passable for what, maybe a quarter of the year, maybe a third of the year, and then once the kids find it in the spring or whoever it is, they rut it up. It's kind of hilly, kind of sheltered, I guess I'd call it, doesn't dry out well, and I can't tell you how many times we've just moved a dozer up in there and just had to reshape it because it just gets to a point where you can't get in and out there. We have a couple other dirt roads similar to it, so it's not a brand new situation. But when you have pasture in the middle of it, or you're a neighbor in that area, you kind of get fed up with it, I believe, and that's typically where these conversations really kind of reach a boiling point. People kind of get onto the same page. So by state law, for a dirt road to change classification, which by classification change, to be able to go a B-level road by state law is what it is. It's a dirt road. It's an open dirt road, open to the public all the time, all year long, no hindrances. And you'd be surprised, we get a lot of calls from folks along dirt roads. They don't really want to mess with anything. They just want me to say, go ahead and put a gate up so that when it's wet, people don't tear it up. Because if people just leave the road alone, I think in general, we'd never hear from anybody. If they didn't tear it up, if they didn't do damage, even when it's dry, they go back in and either dump trash, or you've got drug paraphernalia issues, or or they're trespassing. And that's, again, those are the three main things I hear when people call me about a dirt road and what can we do. And so, unfortunately, the Code of Iowa doesn't allow for somebody to just throw a gate across, or I've seen farm equipment, I've seen all sorts of ways to put an obstruction across a road that's supposed to be open to make sure that it's not open. We had another one elsewhere in the county where I found out that they actually installed gates, and it took forever for us to find out, but we contacted it was a renter actually, it wasn't even a landowner, and they removed the gates. So it's not an uncommon topic. In this situation, the proper way to be able to gate a B-level road is to convert it to a C-level road. And again, the Code of Iowa, that is the only classification that this is allowed, that this is the way. And some counties don't allow C-level roads. We are a county that they've had C-levels since before my time at least, or at least right around there. I don't know when it came into existence. And we have done a few of them, not a lot, but a few of them. So the county ordinance to convert from a B-level road to a C-level road is, there's language in it. I have other copies of the ordinance if anybody wants it. I always encourage landowners, anybody interested in this, to read the ordinance, because there is specific language in there that is, again, code-driven. for it. Our county ordinance, and I'm not gonna read the entire ordinance, and if somebody wants it, I'll hand it to them today. But our county ordinance calls out to have, for this to be considered, that a petition has to be signed by all landowners adjoining the road. And so the way I read that is that we need to have a petition, and we've done this on the past ones where 100% of the adjoining landowners sign a petition for the board to consider making it a sea level. It doesn't mean that it will become a sea level. That becomes a decision the board makes from public input at that specific public hearing. But how we have always handled it is that if we didn't have a petition signed by all adjoining landowners, it did not make it to the hearing process with the Board of Supervisors.
Weren't we missing a signature on this petition?
This particular, that's why we're sitting here, because they are missing a signature for 100%. And so what has been requested by Mr. Wirt is that the ordinance be amended to allow for a petition to be considered with less than 100% signatures. Now, we could say, we could do anything. We could, I sent out a survey to other counties. Again, not all counties allow sea level roads. But I did send out but a fair number do, or at least consider them. And I sent out a memo to all county engineers, kind of a thing, and there's a broad spectrum of what people do. Some do the petition with 100%, some don't even require a petition. You show up and make a request, and then they start into kind of a process of review and public input and that sort of stuff, and then start into a classification process, and then there's everything in between. So exactly what we want the ordinance to read, if we change it from what it is now, that's kind of a decision for the board to think about, but I still think a petition is a good thing. I think it is a snapshot of what the adjoining landowners think, and I think while the rest of the public definitely gets their opportunity to give their say, I think if you discount at any point what an adjoining landowner thinks, I think it's a mistake. I think they have, in that particular road segment, they certainly have an interest that needs to be, you could see from the signature, were they willing to sign or not? It doesn't necessarily give you the perspective. Hopefully they'll give you that during public input. So I don't think a petition is a bad thing, but just, I'll kind of wrap up my summary is that in general, we're here because of one road, but the ordinance is not because of one road. The ordinance is an ordinance for Des Moines County that could be asked about and utilized all the way across the county for basically any road. And so really it comes down to they're requesting the board to consider modifying the ordinance to allow for a petition process that does not require for all adjacent landowners. And again, that petition is just to get it considered, not to get it approved. Rick and I have talked before, and I'm upfront with anybody, there's never a guarantee, depending on public input, that things get approved when they get to that point in the process. I think they didn't get approved when we looked at the vacation years ago. I'll turn it over to these folks because they have the real life experience on the road, but that's where we're at. We're looking at an ordinance. Do we want to amend the ordinance to make it a little more flexible for a situation to be at least considered through a public hearing process? And then if that is done, we'll go through all those steps, which requires some special advertisement and a minimal, but an ordinance modification. Go through all of that, and if that all gets done, I still have an original petition from Mr. Wirt sitting at the office. It's not been submitted to the board yet. He gave it to us, so my guess is you would have a petition coming if this flexibility in the ordinance is granted. So I'll turn it over to Rick and whoever else wants to speak, and let you guys kind of give your perspective to the board. Like I said, they're not new to it. The board's been, I've talked to the board about this and everything, but certainly they need to hear your guys' perspective.
I have one question before we start. This is gonna landlock anybody?
Well, the sea level? Well,
Yeah.
actually, I mean, all the adjacent landowners get a key to the gate. That's by code also. So whether you sign the petition or not, if you're an adjacent landowner, you get a key. And also, if you're a renter, for instance, you have rights, or a leasee or something like that, you have rights to a key. If the general public comes in and says, I wanna drive through there, I want a key, they don't have a legal right to a key. But, so as far as landlocking, anybody inside the gates is gonna have to, if they are a landowner, is gonna have to open the gate basically to get in, and get out. But as far as pure landlocking, if they're an adjacent landowner, they have a key. So no, they're not landlocked. If it was vacated, for instance, and completely closed, actually, Rick's ground is landlocked, from that perspective. It only comes out to the dirt road, so it would be landlocked in that situation, but this is not what we're talking about, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, we're just, like Brian said, we're just down the road, wanna call it a Class C, but we have to get this. I got all the landowners to agree with it, except one older couple that he's had a stroke and can't even talk. He's in a nursing home. She's the only one who wouldn't sign it for him. They don't own any of the road. They don't own any of the right-of-way. They border the right-of-way for about 70 feet in one gully. That's all they've got interest in, maybe 70 feet bordering the right-of-way. And I tried to talk to her. They moved to Burlington. They live in Burlington. They've got their son living in a house out there, you know, which is, the deputies know all about him. She's just sentimental to that road. She just told me, she said, I just remember driving up through there for years. She knows, you know, she's talked to some of these guys, and she's just sentimental about it. And like I said, I just don't think she has the right to say what happens with this road. All the trouble we've been putting up with for 70 feet of bordering a right-of-way. And she just would not sign it. And like I said, I just think we ought to be able to go around her, not, you know, she doesn't have any interest in that road whatsoever in my book. I am really the only one with interest down that road because I'm in the middle of it. I've got cattle. I have to haul cattle in there and stuff, and the kids tear it up so bad at times that you can't even get down it. And Jim, remember when we talked about vacating it, you went down it one time. Because I remember you said that if you had your boat right then, you'd shut it down then. Who would drive through this shithole?
Yep.
Because they had ruts and water. And that one year I had all my cattle out. And it kept raining, the kids kept tearing it up. I couldn't even haul my cattle out. Maybe I shouldn't have. I took my own dozer and I opened the road up. I shoved the crap off the sides. And they all knew about it. But I hauled my cattle out, and since then, like right now it's dry, the road's in good shape. But there's still kids. Every time we get a half-inch rain, there's kids that come in from the south way, tearing up through there. They're turning around up in our pasture where we've got no fence at the moment. I tore it out to build a new fence. Last fall, some kid, we know who a lot of them are, but they came up, tore the road all up, they slid off the road into our fence. The only way they could get out, they cut the 6 barbed wires, got out and left. I didn't know it. Our cattle could have been out. Wally saw it a couple days ago, and my daughter and I quit picking corn to go patch a fence. Now, if that road was dry, I got no problem with people going through it when it's dry. But when it's muddy, that's a different issue. But when they start cutting fences, and that's what, I've got an issue with that. But like I said, for right now though, we can't do anything, but because she would not sign this paper for me, but that's our whole issue right now. Like I said, we all own the road, basically 99.9% of the road.
Trent, is there any repercussions for us as far as,
So my assessment of our ordinance is, it's kind of a unique thing where we have section 3, and it is exactly like Brian said. It says that, roads may only be classified as area service C by resolution of the board upon petition signed by all adjoining landowners. So that portion of the resolution takes the authority of the board away. And then if you read on to B and C, it gives the legal requirements of notice for action. that the state code gives to us. So this is way above and beyond what the state code would tie the hands of the board. B and C, it's just your basic notice provisions, just like everything else. And then as you read on, right, number one rule of statutory interpretation, read on, you get to section 9, and it gives the power of the boards. Then it says all jurisdiction and control over Area C roads shall rest with the board pursuant to Iowa Code section 30697. So that section then gives that authority back. So our ordinance in and of itself does this kind of hokey pokey where it takes the authority away, but within the same code section,
Gives it right back.
it gives it right back. So if you wanted to waive the requirement of 100% signed petition, I believe you could, to modify this and at least take out that 100% requirement. I think it could be, I think, and I think again, Brian's right, it's a good consideration, and you could have that be part of your process, but to say that the board is not allowed to do action beforehand, is
What about this, Trent? What about just to have it done and done? Couldn't we change it to that we won't consider it unless that's over 50% of the people that are interested in doing this? And then that'll open the door, so if there's, you know what I'm saying, if we're dealing with 5 homeowners and there's 3, we've got over 50%, so at least we can look into it. Is that even needed, or because I still wanna, down the road, I wanna make sure that it's not too great, you know what I mean?
I agree with what you're saying. I think, really, it's, as a technical legal construct, short of contracts and some people saying that decisions were made in, based on legislation limiting future boards. These types of things, saying that you as a board are gonna say in perpetuity or for the next 10, 20 years, a board of supervisors sitting 10 years from now cannot do something. It's really hard unless somebody can show specific reliance on that, and even so, it's hard. I mean, technically you can vote down and say, hey, this, whether it's a 50% or 100% requirement, but I think, like we were talking just a few minutes ago about the nuisance, I think if you say, hey, this is a consideration, this is something we want to see, is a petition signed by as many, and with the adjacent landowners, so say if there's 10 adjacent landowners and there's signatures in 8 of them, or 10 of them, or 5 of them, we can request that that's in there as a process, but I think where you're requiring future boards to have a certain number of signatures on that list of, say, 10, whether it's 50%, 80%, 100%, it gets problematic, but I think you can put it in there as a consideration, as something they should provide to you with their application for you to consider. I think that's really probably the best way to go about it.
I would use as an example to that, so by code of Iowa, if somebody wants to vacate a road, there's nothing to stop the board. Or if the board wants to vacate a road, and the landowners don't agree, there is a process for reimbursement to landowners for loss of access, but the board has the right to vacate a road, close a road, with or without any input or anything from the public. However, when those requests come to me for a road vacation, or we decide to vacate a road, a lot of times if we decide to do it, it's somewhere in a little town somewhere where it's an alley that nobody knew existed, something like that. But most of the time it's a landowner request. If there's multiple landowners, I frequently, and it's been a long time since it's come up, I'd still have them do a petition to show their interest to the board, even though it's not required anywhere in the code, in a policy or anything. It's just a method to show the board that they're interested. And it kind of sounds like what Trent's talking about is is the request of a petition, but not put any specific limits on it. I'm neutral to the whole thing. I mean, I will follow by whatever rules the board wants to set. I agree with Rick to the standpoint that I don't think a request like this should be held up by just one or two signatures. You know, if I don't agree with something that somebody come and requests, and there are plenty of dirt roads where if somebody came and asked about a sea level, I'd say I don't agree with that. And that's the case, and then we probably wouldn't move forward with it. I mean, because people don't wanna waste their time, but I just don't think it's right to hold it up for consideration, just because of that one detail. And I think really from Trent's review, I'm not sure he's comfortable with it being the one thing that holds it up anyway, from what I gather, so, it kinda all sounds like it needs to be updated, the ordinance needs to be updated just to make the legal side of it a little cleaner, and obviously also because of the request. But anyway, we do petitions for other things. We've had people that wanted roads paved that we've had petitions for. There's no requirement for that, and again, it's just showing interest, so.
You're just basically removing a contradiction from the
Right,
ordinance.
right, that's what I'm suggesting is, because it does, on its face, if you read the whole thing, it contradicts itself. And so I think if we remove that, and I don't think we have to take out of the whole petition as a whole. I think instead of saying we require a certain number, just ask that, you know, a petition be presented. Or, you know, have language in there saying petition be presented, it doesn't need a certain amount of you know. But I think if I was sitting in one of your chairs, I would wanna know, right? You know, what do the neighbors think, right? So, it is a good tool, but, when we start talking about taking powers away from the board, and especially powers away from future boards, that gets really, we get ourselves into a dicey area.
I'm just saying that paper that I did get all the landowners to sign and stuff, it's just those two. We've got 90% of it already. They don't own anything. These two signatures, they don't own anything. They don't even report it, are they? But the one, if he was able to talk, he would go along with me, because I've got along with him for years. It's just his wife, is just sentimental to the road. And she said, when I just come talking to her, she said, I hope you get her done. But she just was not willing to sign it. And I'm not trying to shut the road down. I just want to put gates across it so the kids don't tear it up. Because I just say Allen, for example, they go through their old time when it's dry. You know, let's put the gates on it and go through it when it's dry. When it's, you know, that's what I like. But like I said, we can't do anything unless this signature is basically, we don't need her signature. And she won't sign it. I've tried everything. I've tried to buy an acre of ground from her right there.
It's gonna be a two-part process. One of them's getting this changed, and then the other's coming back for the petition, so I don't have a problem changing this. Having Brent rewrite this to where you're taking that 100% out.
We're just taking a contradiction out of it.
And go that way.
Make it pretty, Trent.
I'll work with Trent. Trent, I can work with you so you don't get stuck with it, because it's my ordinance, so I need to understand.
You'll have to schedule that because it's inspection days. It's Wednesday and Thursday.
True. My calendar's filling up.
Does anybody else have anything to say about this? Sitting here, Alan, or?
Yeah, if it gets changed during all this process to a C road, who maintains it? The property owners or the county?
I can answer to that, and I'll send a petition home with you, just so anybody that wants one, so you can look through it, because you should be comfortable with the petition. So the way we handle sea level roads is that we kind of do it by request. In fact, I think that's almost the language in there. So essentially, in theory, the gates are closed and locked. I say in theory because I don't think anybody here is dumb. And you could probably go to a fair number of them and find a gate open unless they've had some issues. Because after a couple years, people tend to quit bothering it because they can't get in there. However, once gates closed up or whatever, we tend to not show up unless a landowner calls and says, could you put this on your radar? And most of these, once people quit running them up, don't need a lot. I can think of one, for instance, where after a number of years, we ran a boom mower brush cutter through just to knock some limbs back. You know, I'm sure we have had to move in somewhere and shape one up because of it getting cut in ruts and stuff like that, but, so it is still county maintenance, it's just even less maintenance than.
The hill washes out on a heavy rain.
Yeah, but again, there's never a rain that comes along where there probably weren't ruts somewhere, and I mean, you lose some of those dynamics, you really do. The best I can tell you is that, because I know counties and county engineers that are dead set against these. They will not even consider them, even when landowners come, boards and counties will not do it. Because there is a belief out there that it's a public road and it should be open, whether it's allowable or not, that does hang out there in other counties. I will just tell you that once you gate it and get people to leave it alone, I mean, you're right, perhaps rain causes a problem and that's a possibility, but generally these roads, we don't get a lot of calls from landowners on these roads. We really don't. Maybe this one will be a little more active, maybe we'll need to be there a little more often, but in general, they go pretty quiet.
But if you are called, you will maintain the road.
Yeah, here, let me open this up. Maintenance policy, minimum maintenance on level C roads shall be as follows: blading. Blading will not be performed on a regular basis, nothing new than from a dirt road. It doesn't say we won't do it, just says it won't be performed on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Snow and ice, we don't remove snow and ice on dirt roads generally, so unless he's cutting from top to bottom or something like that. Mowing or spraying weeds, cutting brush, tree removal may not be performed, so all these are mays. Structures, which doesn't matter here. I guess what I'm saying is, and of course it's not gonna get any surfacing, it's still a county road, we're still there. It's pretty much like a B-level road, it's just we're gonna come when somebody calls. And we basically, if somebody calls us, we say leave the gate open, or we'll call you when we can get there, leave the gate open, and we'll run the motor grader through there and try to touch it up, kind of a thing. It is still a county road, and it is still county maintenance.
Okay.
So,
Good.
You know, one of the reasons I support these, especially in high wear and tear is what I'm gonna call it areas, is because it does tend to, because it's not like we're there all the time, but we have had to move a dozer out to this road far more than once.
Yeah.
And that's a body and equipment and everything else that if we can cut that back, to me, that's a win.
Yeah.
You know, if you went up and called me and said, I want a C-level dirt road up by Yarmouth that cuts from one road to another, I'm gonna tell you no, because it's a cut through, people use it constantly, and it is a connection. Here, you know, it is a connection, I understand that, but it's also one that gets abused, and it is a high maintenance area. And I know what Rick's talking about with moving his dozer in, because he called me.
The last really 5 to 6 years have been the worst, because the kids tear it up, and then when it does dry out, I mean, you can't drive down it because the ruts are that deep, and you're never gonna stop these kids from tearing it up.
Yep.
And it's not for school kids.
We have to shut the gates when it's wet to keep the kids off. And then you won't have to do the maintenance like what you're doing now.
Yep.
For the hill, yeah, but even if the kids stay off the hill, it's not gonna wash out there as bad.
Well, and they're damaging personal property, I mean, like your fence.
Well, yeah, that draws a line, yeah, but like I said here, this last time here, 2 weeks ago, somebody come up the road, they slid off, got in the little ditch that's there, and they came along and hit the pipe that's under the road. You know, they don't know it's there because of the weeds, they could have tore their front end off from under it. You know, who cares, well now the pipe's broke, and it ain't gonna work the way it should because they destroyed it. And like, remember last year when I told you that somebody dumped those 2 loads of shingles there?
Mm-hmm.
Now, we can't stop that when it's dry, they can still go up there, but at least, you know, my fence will be back in there, and then, you know, the shingles are on your property.
You can't stop
you
it
gotta-
because you'll have gates that are
Right,
technically closed.
right, yeah, we can do a lot of it, we
So,
can do a lot of it,
But
yeah, but how
anyway.
many times have I taken care of that road with my nose?
Yeah, because
You know.
you needed to get there and we couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're the high demand for need to be in the middle.
Right, I mean,
no
everybody
question
else
about
don't
it.
need to go down that road, you know, but when I have to haul cows, I gotta do it.
Yep.
You can't take care of mud that's that deep because of the kids.
Yep, understood. And so to answer your question, is it is still a county road, it's just even, it's very similar to a dirt road, except for historically, we don't have to be there nearly as often as even on a dirt road.
But when you close the road, then there's no.
I see.
Once the road's closed, or what we call vacated, which is the legal term for it, then it's no longer a county road. So way back when we were talking about a road vacation, because my suggestion was never just to vacate this road by itself, my suggestion was vacate the road, but have everybody sign an easement on top of the current road, so everybody had private easement to all of their properties. Get rid of the underlying road easement, and then you have full control. So, I mean, that's really that final step where the county does step away. There is no county maintenance, because the road is no longer a county road. And people didn't want that, and that's fine. So, but in this case, as a sea level road, it does remain a county road, and I'm not gonna tell you it'll be the first priority, but if it needs, or if a landowner calls and leaves the gate open for us, we will maintain it to a level.
But the reason I'm pushing now is because, like I said, they slid off the road last year into my fence, cut the fence, so when my cows can walk up the line 80 rod and get in somebody's cornfield, I got a problem with that. I just want these kids off the road and earn some money.
Why do you got a problem with that, man? They just cut your fence.
I worked a week putting that fence in.
I'll bet you did. Bet you did.
Well, to summarize, I think what I've heard is that the board is open to Trent and I working and tweaking, because it's not major, tweaking the language on the petition side of it. And we'll go through, I told you, Rick, it's a process. There's an advertising time frame, and we're talking of probably a month to a month and a half to get this done. I can let you know once it's officially done, and I will, and then your petition can kind of move from there. But the board's supportive of Trent and I working together to revamp the petition language so that it doesn't get as specific as it is.
Yeah.
Is that a correct statement?
Yeah.
And down the road, when we have a public hearing to see if anybody objects to doing this, I don't know of anybody that will object to it now. Like before they did, I understand, but I got one point in my favor. David Holstein, I don't know if you guys know him, he's 100% in favor of it. You surely had him in here 50 times, so.
No, Dave's not a frequent flyer down here. Most people don't like to come down here.
Well, he would have been here today, except they had the auction at the fair at 9 o'clock. But he supports this 100% too.
Is that his grandson that got the grand
Yes.
champion and reserve champion?
I figured he'd be
That's
at the
awesome.
sale.
That's awesome.
Seems like a bigger priority.
David doesn't get along with too many people, you know, he's got, right now, his cows got in a neighbor's cornfield up there during the past week.
Oh.
He won't acknowledge they're his. So the guy's corn, I know him, he's a good friend, you know, and they're gonna have a little problem there, 'cause he's not gonna get insurance money if David, you can't prove they were David's. I got cattle on down the line, but they weren't mine, but.
Look like here's, so can you just take the cows to market? I mean,
Or
they
legs
got,
and ears.
they got the corn in the belly, right?
It's just kind of a bad deal.
Well, that's why the lawyer said that, but hey.
How can you prove whose cows they were?
Possession's 9/10 of the.
It's just an issue all the time with this road, that's what it boils down to. And like I said, Brian and I talk about it all the time, and like he told you, I'll admit, I parked my Rover across the road for a few days when it was wet, and I kept them off of it for a few days, and then somebody tried to get by it and ended up in a little trouble. But I believe in the Wild West days.
Don't say anymore.
You might not be doing yourself that bad.
And
So
like I
before we
said,
digress too far.
like I said, Jim drove down that road one time, he knows what we're talking
I
about.
went down there just not too long ago, and it was, it had been dry out for some time, and there were still some wet spots in that road.
It's in good shape right now, but we've been dry all year.
On that hill.
Yeah, it gets shaded.
You know, I wish I'd known where that road was about 50, 60 years ago.
He's lying, they knew where it was 50 or 60 years ago. Don't say anymore, Jim, we're recording.
It's still been stuck there.
Okay, we got like I said, this is a two-part thing, so let us get this taken care of first. And Brian,
I'll
take
get back
care
in
of
touch
that.
with you.
And then, Brian will get back with you when you, comes time to present that petition.
And I would again say thank you to you guys for coming.
No doubt.
I know it seems, like you wasted your morning, and you might have, but it is important for the board when they're gonna make policy changes to see that there are people in the public that support it. Otherwise, status quo seems to be working. So it really truly is important that you showed the support for this.
You was talking about that thing they got signed now, is that all? That's the petition?
That is the petition.
I
And
don't
it
have to
hasn't
do it.
been
I don't
presented
have
to the
to
board yet, so
Okay,
once we get
okay.
to there, it's still sitting in my office, because it didn't have all the signatures, so
Right,
couldn't,
okay.
so I'll just hold on to it and go through that. I'll touch base with you and probably just present it to them during a public hearing process, so it's formally presented. Technically, it's getting presented from you and not from me, but people drop them off at our office sometimes, so no big deal. So that'll be down the line.
It's always good to see a classmate of mine. Alan and I graduated together.
You should have seen him a couple weeks ago when I saw him.
Yeah, and both of you still got your hair. Show off. Is this meeting over yet?
I won't tell him what you did.
Well, thanks for coming, we really appreciate that, and, like I said, Brian will get back with you when everything's ready.
Well, like I said, it's just my doing, I mean, these guys don't care if my cows are out. They just put one in the freezer every year.
Well, they all came down to support. You guys didn't waste your gas money today.
All right, thank you.
There is a National Peace Officers Day out at the auditorium tonight, on the south side of the auditorium. You can go down there and get free hot dogs and see all the police vehicles and
Well, we need that.
SWAT team thing.
You have to make a special trip for that.
We live in a safe neighborhood.
For your whirlwind, Rick.
Don't worry, I'm gonna get a warrant to search every one of your freezers. I'm missing a bowl now, last year county captures I'm missing.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you folks, take care.
Thanks, yeah.
Thanks, Trish.
Send our check to the mail for
Yeah.
now.